Good morning and welcome to another edition of Chairman Chats. This is Jack Jovan, Chairman of the Southbridge Town Council. I'm pleased today to have Dr. Jeffrey Villar, the school receiver, to talk about the upcoming school year and chat a little bit about the challenges that we face here in the town of Southbridge. So good morning, Jeff. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Usually this is the third time I think I've had you in the studio since you've been here. So 2 full years now, I think, in Southbridge?
Yeah, going on 2.5.
Yeah, so this year, unlike any other, I think, in your career, has been quite a challenge, hasn't it?
It has, and I've been in central office for maybe 16 years, and this is absolutely the most challenging opening of school I've ever experienced. And I'd say throughout my educational career, it's the most challenging year. Just tons of unknowns.
So normally we'd have you come in and talk about all the successes that we've had in the upcoming year, the plans that we had put in place. That kind of more or less got blown up and thrown out the window with the COVID-19 pandemic. So schools closed. We had to close schools here in Southbridge about what time? March? Middle of
March 13th.
So since March 13th, there's been no students in the schools.
That's correct.
So what kind of challenges did you have to close out the year and then transition into the summer?
Yeah, this past spring was just horrific in my opinion as an educator. No one was prepared for what the pandemic brought. The need to close schools really with no planning, left everyone scrambling. And I got to do a shout out to the teachers who really worked super hard to try to come up with paper-based educational activities for kids. And we created a system to distribute those packets out to families, and thousands and thousands of pages of materials were produced. But as an educator, I got to say that's not the best way to do education. We were flat-footed because we did not have one-to-one computer technology for our kids. We had large numbers of families that didn't have reliable internet service, or they had one computer at home and 2 or 3 children all in school. So at the end of the day, from an educational perspective, the fall didn't go well for not just Southbridge, for thousands of kids across our country. We immediately switched over to feeding families, and we're able to kind of convert our food program and distributed roughly 1,400 meals a day here in Southbridge. I felt that was a really important push as folks began to lose their jobs and kids weren't in school where they normally get breakfast and lunch. And so we had to make a lot of changes to pivot. But from that point on, I was very concerned about what is this upcoming school year going to look like. And so we began to work real hard to try to secure resources to prepare. But even as we prepare every day, guidance changes, and I brought us a visual aid for folks. This is a pile of regulations and rules that have been developed for opening a school this year in Southbridge. I mean, we're talking hundreds of pages. Many of them are either state guidance or from the Department of Public Health or from the Center for Disease Control, and then just internal regulations. But we're pivoting to a technology-based as a district and have placed an order for about 1,700 Chromebooks so that we can distribute a Chromebook to every student this year. We have purchased Wi-Fi hotspots so that if we have families that meet criteria, that we can give them internet access. But so we've been trying over summer to develop a list of necessary resources to open school safely, for sure.
And that really is the key, and I think as a council and with the school district since March, and you were a great partner with the town side in the Emergency Operations Center, working with the police and fire chief and other town officials, communicating the safety aspect of our town and the students and making sure that feeding program was ongoing. And throughout a lot of those updates, you always communicated to us the outreach that you put out to the parents through the feeding program. Was that a helpful tool?
Yeah, I think so. Families came on a regular basis, and we were able to use that to get some information about what parents needed, and it helped us plan. Our outreach has now gone to a point where we've actually talked to over 1,200 students' families out of a district of 1,700, 1,800 students this year. And we have folks today still knocking on doors. We're trying to ascertain families' choice. And I should back up. Early in the summer, I communicated to our staff that as we think about opening school, we're going to have 2 guiding principles. The first is to maintain the health and safety of our students and of all of our teachers and staff. The second, in that context, how do we deliver a high-quality education for kids? and use those principles as we begin to flesh out how opening school would be. Part of that was a need to say to families, we respect your choice, and we respect your position around your children and concerns you might have due to the pandemic. So I've tried to get the word out. We're offering a remote learning academy for any Southbridge student and family if they're just not comfortable having their child return to school in person. And so we sent folks out and to have conversations with parents. And roughly 40 to 45% of our families are saying they're going to keep their child home and they want them to enroll in our remote learning academy. We will provide them with a Chromebook. We'll work with them to help them secure internet. And they will be given an online learning experience that'll be much different than what we had last spring. There will be a fixed schedule. There'll be expectations to log into live teaching with teachers teaching those classes. There'll be expectation of completed classwork, homework, test quizzes, and attendance. So it'll be virtual school with a much higher level of rigor. And that's all because of technology. So getting that word out, getting folks involved and knowing they have that choice is really important. We are also going to make sure that the kids and families that choose to send their kids to school have a safe option. So we're maintaining 6 feet social distancing in all of our schools at all times. We're mandating mask wearing. Now, there are some regulations that suggest it be a suggestion for kids in kindergarten and first grade. We're mandating it. Happy to have a conversation with individual families about why or why not they think that's a good idea. But for the general welfare of all of our students and teachers, we feel it's important that kids wear masks at school. We're following all the safety guidelines to make sure that those families who choose to send their kids to school can feel good knowing that we are trying to do our best to make our environment as safe as possible for our kids and our teachers. I direct people to our website where they can find the plan. There's a quick summary because the plan is 185 pages long, so there is a couple-page summary that hits the highlights and then refers to parts of the plan if you want more detail. It's in English and Spanish, and so that I think is important for folks to take a look at. But it's certainly going to be challenging, but I think those 2 guiding principles are most important.
So we touched on, I know this morning I was looking at an article in Telegram and Gazette. It was a quick snapshot of what area districts are doing for their learning, and the majority of the districts are hybrid. And it listed Southbridge as a hybrid. So you just kind of announced or communicated that for parents that aren't comfortable at this time sending kids to school, they have the remote experience. What about the remaining students? What does that look like first on the elementary level and then on the secondary level?
Great question. Glad I can be more clear about that. So we have first option, keep your child home, full remote. Then the remaining kids, elementary school, recognizing the need for those children to be in school, respecting the need for families often depend on schools for child care too. It's a reality, it's a practical reality. And my own situation, I have a 9-year-old at home. I have a wife who's a 2nd grade teacher, and this is a real concern for us too. So in elementary schools, if you send your child to school full-time, we will have social distancing in the classroom. Likely the class is going to be smaller than what you experienced last year because of that social distancing. We've actually gone through every class in every room in all of our schools, removed all the furniture, took all the measurements, did all the calculations, put desks back, socially distanced 6 feet. They're the cleanest the classrooms have probably been since the buildings were open. And arrange the environment so that it can control for that distancing that's necessary for kids. We're changing our cleaning cycles. We're working on maximizing our HVAC systems, getting the technology in place, hiring more custodians, purchasing cleaning equipment, really trying to amp up the security of the school. So elementary kids that come to school can count on having a mask and being separated all day, having mask breaks, and receiving instruction from their classroom teacher with a heavy reliance on technology this year. In our secondary schools, because of the larger size of those schools and the numbers of students, we're going to what they call hybrid. And so that means kids are going to be divided into 2 groups. For sake of colors, a red group, cohort 1, white group, cohort 2. We're trying to make sure that families aren't split across cohorts, so keep everyone together. And they'll attend school by cohort. So for example, on Monday, red might go Monday, Tuesday. On Wednesday, the whole school is remote. Thursday, Friday is white. So this translates to students are in school 2 days a week and learning remotely 3 days a week. And again, attendance, participation in remote instruction, grading, all are going to be at the highest level of rigor. You can't stay home and not do work and think you're going to pass your classes this year. You're going to have to log in, you're going to have to participate in remote learning, you're going to have to complete assignments, take quizzes. It's going to be a robust school environment for those kids. We had to do hybrid because of the numbers. We want to make sure safety, number one priority. Instruction is the number two priority. And that's where the rub came. The other change is transportation. We're limited to 1/3 the number of kids on a bus. So we've had to change our bus routes and the number of buses assigned to each school. I went to the transportation company first and asked for more buses. That's not possible. And most districts are hearing that. So we had to change our bus tiers. And quickly what that means is we used to have our secondary kids get picked up and brought to school first, and then all of our elementary schools would get picked up second. We can't do that with the limitations on student ridership on the buses. So now we're going to have 3 tiers. So we'll have the high school, middle school picked up, a tier for 2 elementary schools, likely Charlton and West Street, and then a tier for ERS, Eastford Road School, the pre-K1 school. Connected to that are likely to be shifts in start and stop times. I'm not prepared to give the exact times because we're working with the transportation company trying to keep it as close to what normal is as possible. I know that this is another point of friction for families. I know they have daycare and work and trying to balance all of that. Our teachers also have concerns around this, but we have to do it for safety. And we have to be able to provide transportation for all kids, even if families elect to transport their kids alone. So that's a major shift. So that's how we're doing hybrid. But again, it starts with parent choice. What do you want for your kid? If you want to keep them home, we'll help you do a good job with that and respect that 100%. And if you're sending your kids to school, we really appreciate your trust, and we're going to do everything we can to make that the safest environment possible.
So a little bit more, if you could expand on the virtual academy. Are those teachers that are teaching that content, are they Southbridge teachers, or is that on-base platform?
That's great. So our plan, and this is evolving, we're actually, I just attended a meeting this week where we had about 20 teacher leaders at ERS, Eastford Road School, from all the elementary schools together, as we were talking about the challenges that remote education presents to teachers. And the model that appears to be coming out of all of that collaboration, again, working with these teachers, because I believe they're the ones that are going to solve this problem best, knowing that we have the technology on its way, we're going to essentially assign to each classroom in the elementary level a group of kids, likely around 10, maybe 12 kids, and then a group of kids who are learning remotely. And they're going to learn what we call synchronously. It's the new high-tech term now in education, but at the same time, together. So the teacher might be doing a morning meeting, which is a part of the elementary classroom, and 10 kids are in front of her and 10 kids are at home. And they're watching on their laptop, their Chromebook, and the teacher has their Chromebook open, and we also have projectors and other equipment for this. But in that way, all the kids are participating in the same instruction. And those 10 kids who are at home are part of the school community. They're part of that classroom. We think that's really important, that they feel connected, that they're not just out on an island and, hey, you chose remote, so here's some lessons, do it yourself. No, you're part of the classroom. And the teacher will directly instruct, just as if you're sitting in the class. Now, there'll be hurdles, there'll be technical bumps. We know this is not going to be perfect, but we think it's a really good way to connect kids. Then you might imagine, as in any classroom, there'll be a time for kids to do independent work. And so the teacher assigns that independent work. We're really lucky that over the last few years we have purchased digital options, online learning options that teachers have incorporated into their classrooms related to what we're teaching. So there's what we call Wonders, which is our literacy program. That has online activities that kids can do. We use another program called iReady, which is language arts and math. That has online components. So we're going to lean heavy on some of those activities so that kids at home When it's time for them to break off independently, they can have a more engaging online activity that then gives the teacher feedback as to how much time the kids spent, what did they struggle on, what did they master. So we're kind of building out that model, and we're going to try the same thing at the high school. Obviously different grade level, but the same type of approach with a little less of the online activities and a lot more of the independent learning as you would expect from older kids. Because teachers can make assignments, have them do their own research, write their own papers, that kind of, and then give feedback. In the middle school, we're going to try to be a little innovative and rely on some Edgenuity, which is an online platform for our remote learners, and see if we can, see if that's engaging and works well for kids. As I say to staff, and I'll say to families, this is all new to us. I wish I could tell you we knew exactly the best way to do this. Anyone who tells you they know the best way, they're not being genuine, because this is new to our whole country. But we're going to study these different models and see which gets us the best result for our kids. I think we're going to have to reach out a lot to kids who are learning at home to make sure they stay engaged. But so that's a kind of brief overview of what our plans are for providing instruction. I can't stress enough that it's serious, attendance will matter, assignments will be corrected, and grades, kids are really going to have to dig in and do the work, and families are going to have to feel comfortable knowing that they can reach out to the school if they're having problems, because I expect that there will be problems. I have kids myself. I watched one of my high school age kids really struggle learning remotely last year, and we really had to try to intervene and help her out. I had another teenage kid who did really good remotely. And I have a 9-year-old, and we'll see. I'm not quite sure how he's going to do. So this is going to be a trying time for all of us.
So I think one of the strongest things that I think I've heard, though, is the fact that as a district, a town, and with DESE, knowing that we had the limited capacity in technology last year, that was one of the big hurdles, I believe, that we're able now to get to a point of every kid pretty much will have a Chromebook, as well as the ability to give them the hotspots. I think you called like 400 hotspots. Mm-hmm. So I think that in itself leads us a little bit further ahead than what we were last year.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, we're sweating on the technology this summer. When things go bad, sometimes you don't think it could get any worse. I got a call to attend a meeting, and I was notified that our Chromebook order that we placed really at the spring at this point was part of 108,000 Chromebooks that were on a shipment from China that were seized by the U.S. Department of Commerce because they were produced illegally in China. So they were delayed. We made a change in the model that we ordered from the supplier. Just today, we received 300 of those Chromebooks. Because we're worried that, hey, where's the rest and when are they coming, we were able to use additional state COVID money for technology, and we placed a second order for Chromebooks that are expected in the first week of September. That's part of the reason why I pushed school back to the 14th of September, is we need to get these materials so we can deliver instruction. The hotspots have already arrived. We are also using those 14 days to provide teachers with training. So we have a group coming on starting next week, working with teachers on how to set up Google Classroom most effectively. And then throughout the year, we'll be working with our teachers on different ways of using technology so that they get support in this new era of trying to use technology. But the Chromebooks are a huge step forward for us. I do believe this is an opportunity for us to change education and finally embrace technology in a way we've failed to do so far.
Yeah, it's always been a challenge when we talk about technology and the move into 21st century learning and the kids nowadays. And I remember years ago going to a Mass Association School Committee conference when I was on school committee, and there was this presenter that talked about 21st century learning and how kids nowadays, they're so multitasked with phones, and they can play a game, phone, and Snapchat and do whatever they can all at the same time. And they get into the classroom and it's slowed down because of the way we are. So it does lead us to new sites, I guess, and that's what happens when we have events like this.
Yeah, a challenge is an opportunity, right? It's no doubt it's a challenge, it's a setback, but it's also an opportunity, and it's an opportunity for us to pivot and change what education looks like. thank goodness that we were able to get budget savings. Again, working with the council last spring, we were able to get those budget savings to put our first order of Chromebooks in. That was huge. And then, being able to place a second order with the state COVID money, again, huge. We're going to be in a position where our kids will have what they need to learn, on par with, Lexington and other towns. Like, every kid's going to have a quality Chromebook, and we do have hi-fi hotspots for families that can't afford internet. So, starting to try to close that barrier, because quite candidly, right now in parochial schools, top tier, really private schools that are very expensive, they're all opening. Kids are coming back, and they're learning, and so we can't fall behind.
Right.
And that's my concern, is there's an inequity that exists in education, and this pandemic has widened it, and we need to narrow it. And so the Chromebooks are a first step for us.
So let me ask you this: on the families that would need a hotspot, how would they go about reaching out to your office to qualify to get that?
Honestly, we struggle with that a little bit, right? Because there's need, and then there's real need. I think some families, it's a struggle to keep the Wi-Fi, and others it's impossible. And so it's a case by case. We're going to work through the school principal to identify families who are really struggling to get that to happen. We can't afford to pay for everyone to have Wi-Fi. I'd love to. I mean, that would be the easiest way to be most equitable. So we just ask families, if you're struggling and it's a real pressing need for you, reach out to your school principal and have that conversation, because they want your kids connected to school, and so they're gonna make sure that happens. So we're gonna do it case by case. That could cause some friction, because again, people are struggling. But we're gonna do it with dignity. We want to give parents an opportunity. If you need help, we're gonna give it to you.
That's great. So one of the things that I found interesting what you said was, especially at the elementary school level, the kids that are remote will be participate at the same time in the classroom, correct? Mm-hmm. And I think that's important, because at some point everybody's going to come back and they're going to be all in those classrooms, right? That's our hope.
That's how we're planning it, exactly. A lot of towns are facing these things differently, but my plan is at some point we're all coming back. And our biggest challenge will be that interim period at elementary. If things go really, really well, how do you reincorporate everyone and maintain social distancing? At some point, that will become a big challenge. I hope with time that becomes less of an urgent need. And suddenly it's, we don't need the 6 feet anymore. We have new therapeutics. We have a shot, whatever it might be. That could be 3 years from now, though. I just don't know. So I do think giving kids that opportunity to be connected, being able to bring people back into school, will be a really important thing. The other part is the community indicator that the Department of Public Health has created. There's an index. If you want to know how we stand, go to our website, and on the home page right now it says we're in green, and we update that every Wednesday. And that's just one indicator, but it's an important one. It looks at the levels of COVID-19 in the community and gives us an idea of whether or not we're reaching a threshold where we need to be concerned. Good news is I believe throughout the entire pandemic we've been relatively low as a community. Right now we're particularly low, which is great. That's part of my decision to open school is, hey, how's the community look? And it's low here, so that's a great first step. The second piece is we need to have protection and just assume that everyone has COVID. That way you're safe. That's why we have the mask and the social distancing and we do the cleaning. Because that's a layer of safety. It's a fail-safe essentially. But someday, that green might even get better. It might even be white, and then it's like, why are we worried? We should all be back into school. I think if I started remote while we're green, how would we ever know when it's time to go back? Because you find yourself in with no measurable indicator. It's ametric. I like metrics. The data is important, and so we're going to use that. But we'll also work with our local Board of Health, because we do have, for example, rehabilitation facilities, and we have the hospital. So our numbers could tick up, but not actually be a sign of community transmission.
Right.
And so that's a really important thing for me to know as I'm trying to make that decision. And that's why working with the Department of Public Health will be so important there. And they've been a great partner the whole time. And we just need to stay on top of that.
So what would you tell parents today about if their child is not feeling well about coming to school?
Great question. So if your kid is feeling sick, you should keep them home. The new guidance on a COVID fever is 100 degrees. So if your child has a fever of 100 or more, that's a sign of possible COVID infection. And you need to reach out to your medical provider if that's the case, and they'll give you good guidance, I'm sure. But you keep your child home. So if they have a fever, they need to stay home. If they're not feeling well, they should stay home. Call the school, let them know my child doesn't feel well today. Hopefully they feel better the next day. Mm-hmm. And if they haven't had a fever and they feel better, you can send them to school. I will say our nurses and our staff are going to be pretty vigilant. And so I ask parents to be patient because there's going to be calls and they're going to say, your child's presenting sick, we really would like you to bring them home. And that might be a major inconvenience, and I understand that, but we're worried about the safety for everybody. And so, it's important that we stay on top of when people don't feel well, give them a chance to get better and show they don't have COVID. Certainly our nurses will work with families if they have concerns about being tested and et cetera. They can give them guidance as well as their doctors can, I'm sure. So it's going to be a challenge because we're coming into the fall. Cold, flu, other illnesses. Allergies. And so everyone's hypervigilant. We're all afraid. We're all worried about what this is because there's so much unknown. So again, keep the kids home, give us a call, and we'll work again as partners. Having the remote option is great because the kid could be home. They can log in and see their class. If they're feeling up to it, they might be just so sick they need the rest. But it's an option. So we're going to have to work through a lot of things. As we have these huge plans, and I keep saying to folks, the plans will change.
Right. 3 weeks before school starts, and we have no idea what could change in those 3 weeks.
I could be notified, the community's in red, there's an uptick, and then I got to make a decision, right? It could happen. I just don't know. So I have to plan for a lot of contingencies and try to stay nimble. It all comes full circle. That technology is such a huge piece here because it could give us that opportunity to keep teaching kids, regardless of what the environment turns into. We're gonna. It's a day by day. Like I said in the onset, this is the most difficult year I've ever seen.
Right. And the district is much better prepared now than it was in March to go to that all remote if we had to.
Absolutely. I think our teachers have a lot of time to reflect on what happened. Again, the training that we're providing them, getting 14 days of training before school starts has never happened. It's a huge amount of time. So they're going to have plenty of time to be thinking through these scenarios, reaching out to their families of kids that are going to be in their class, and getting prepared. But again, they're going to have to be nimble too. It's just going to be one of those years where the unknown is likely to pop up.
Right.
And we'll do our best to keep having the resources and things we need to respond.
So a lot of planning went into place. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come in today to talk to me about those plans. You'll be meeting with the school committee, I believe you stated, to present again the plan to the public and try to get as much of this information out there now that it's been approved by the state. I know there was some rub that people were concerned that nothing was coming out of your office, but respectfully, we've had this conversation, and the Department of Ed said, wait till this day, and you work for the Department of Ed, so that was why you had to do that.
Yeah, it's a different scenario for me than most superintendents who work for a local school committee. The state had requested that everybody submit their plans before they released them publicly, and of course that's not how it happened. So we were delayed. And once we submitted our plan, I shared it with our teachers, and we made it public. And I call it on our website a draft plan because everything's subject to change, and we're going to continue to revise it. Just this morning, I was speaking with teacher leaders about the plan to make sure they feel comfortable, and we're going to keep working through it to make sure we meet as many needs as we can. It's going to be a challenging time. But it's something that we have to work together on. It can't be done independently. Tuesday night is a school committee meeting. I spoke with the president of the school committee. I'm planning on giving them a presentation, high level of all the details of the plan without getting into every page of 185 pages, but to give people similar information that we talked about today so that, try to get the word out. People still, I think, are having trouble accessing this information. There's a lot going on, and we're trying to funnel people to the school website. School has a social media presence, and of course, I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak, and people can hear this, speak before the school committee. And importantly, we'll have notice on our website. Each school is going to have a community forum. I'll attend. Dr. Farrick, my deputy superintendent, who's been leading the COVID work, will also be in attendance on those meetings. Families are invited, principals are hosting it, and hopefully we can answer questions during those upcoming meetings too. And again, that's all happening in the next couple weeks.
Great. So school opens September 14th.
Correct.
Hybrid model,
Secondary. Yeah.
right, for secondary level. Anybody that wishes to participate remotely has that opportunity.
Correct.
And everything is being done utmost with the safety of staff, teachers, students, and the community.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's in on this. This is a multi-tiered approach to trying to stay safe. Everybody has to rely on everybody else.
Right. And I know because I have a family member that drives for the transportation company, and their meetings are about student safety and what they have to do on their end. So it is going to be take the village to be able to get through this, and a lot of that is make sure you wear your mask, wash your hands, the things that we've been preaching so that we can get through this to get back to, I do not like the term the new normal. Let's get back to normal.
Yeah, I
As
agree
normal
with
as
you.
it's going to be.
And I do think, again, for folks, it seems to me the simplest things work the best here. So wear your mask and wash your hands.
Yeah.
Like those are real important keys to keeping everybody safe.
As everybody can see, I do have my mask in hand. As soon as we close up, we are socially distanced. So, Dr. Villar, thank you very much for being here today. I look forward to, even in a couple of weeks, right before school starts, if you want to come back and give another update, anything that we can do to get that message out to the community, because the kids' number one priority is a good quality education. We've been striving for that in the community, and we'll get through this pandemic and strive for excellence.
Thank you. I really appreciate your help and support in doing this, and this is a great opportunity to talk to Southbridge, so thank you so much.
Thank you. So on behalf of Southbridge Cable TV, I'd like to thank them for allowing us to come in to use this studio for this Chairman Chats. This is Jack Jovan, Chairman of the Town Council, and please be safe, wear your mask, wash your hands, and we'll see you when school opens. Thank you, Dr. Villar.
Thank you.